All right, so today we're going to overview New York's paid medical leave program, which we call TDI, as well as our paid family leave program called referred to as PFL throughout this. And then we're also going to talk about other programs that are available to you when you are pregnant or during the postpartum period. It's a pretty complicated and sometimes confusing landscape of options, and we're going to do our best to demystify the different options that exist before pregnancy, during childbirth, and during the postpartum period. And then we're also going to talk about our efforts to reform New York's medical leave program. As you'll learn today, New York has a medical leave program that is far behind every other state with medical leave. And we are working really hard to make changes that will have a positive impact for pregnant people throughout our state and for anybody dealing with a serious illness. And then we'll take some time for questions and answers. And throughout this presentation, because this material is really dense and sometimes hard to parse through, if you do have questions as I'm talking, please put the questions in the Q&A. And if there's something, Mariah, if I can do this when you're presenting as well, but if there are questions that come up that you want to just share right away, I'm happy to take relevant questions throughout and then take more specific questions at the end. I also want to say here, this presentation, we are sharing legal information, but nothing here is legal advice. And we do have a helpline. The number is at the bottom of this page that's being shared. We're going to talk more about our helpline in a while, but our helpline, we cover all 50 states and take any questions about workplace leave issues. So please reach out to the helpline if you need assistance. And I won't be able to provide any legal advice throughout this presentation. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to be talking about several different pregnancy-related leave laws. We're going to be talking about the FMLA, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, the prenatal leave law, paid family leave in New York, and the New York Temporary Disability Insurance, which is our medical leave program. Mariah, can you go to the next slide and then I'll go back to this one? Thank you.
Yep.
So this what we have up here shows just the different phases, and I'm going to talk through the laws that apply during each. So during pregnancy, let's say towards the beginning of pregnancy, even in the process of getting pregnant, fertility treatments, etc., one, workers are entitled to pregnancy accommodations at work. And we're not going to talk extensively about pregnancy accommodations today because we're covering other kinds of leave. But under the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which is a landmark nationwide civil rights law, employers generally must provide reasonable accommodations for health needs related to pregnancy, childbirth, lactation, and other needs, unless doing so would be an undue hardship for the employer. And a reasonable accommodation is a change to an employer's work environment, job duties, schedule, so that they can keep performing their job and staying safe and healthy. And in the case of pregnancy, keeping that pregnancy safe and healthy. Covered employers have to provide reasonable accommodations for their employer's pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical needs, unless it would be a undue hardship. And the process of figuring out whether it's an undue hardship or not, it's significantly difficult for the employer to show that, but it's an individual process. So, like I said, we're not going to get any more into reasonable accommodations under the PWFA today, but we do have extensive resources on our website about the PWFA. But that's one thing that's available during pregnancy. So, under the federal PWFA, and New York has a PWFA as well. And then also during pregnancy, people are eligible for medical leave. So when we talk about medical leave, we're talking about leave that we need to take care of ourselves and to deal with our own serious illness and also to deal with medical needs that come up during pregnancy. And then during birth, individuals are eligible for medical leave and for paid family leave for bonding. So, and we're going to get into this a little more. And then once returning to work, again, individuals are eligible for accommodations under the PWFA and also for lactation accommodations under the Pump Act. And I'm not going to cover the Pump Act any more than right now, but the Pump Act provides lactating workers nationwide the right to reasonable break time and a place other than a bathroom to pump milk at work and is available to all lactating workers. And there is also more information about the Pump Act on our website. Okay, can you go one slide back? Thank you. So in general, I think of the distinction as when you're taking care of yourself, you're entitled to medical leave. And when you're taking care of another person, whether that's bonding with a new child or taking care of another person with serious illness, that's paid family leave. And most states combine medical leave and paid family leave into one program. New York, however, separates them. So they're two distinct programs. The other programs that apply during pregnancy, and like I said, there are a complicated set of laws that cover pregnancy leave, but the other programs are the FMLA. So the FMLA is a federal program and it provides job protected unpaid leave, and only around 55% of the workplace is eligible for FMLA leave, just in general of all workers. There are several eligibility requirements for the FMLA, which we're not going to cover extensively today, but FMLA leave does apply in addition to the leave that's available under New York State. Also, we talked about the PWFA. New York has its own prenatal leave law. So under New York's prenatal leave law, there's 20 hours of additional sick time that individuals are eligible for to cover pregnancy related needs, to go to appointments and other health care related to pregnancy. And then there's paid family leave and New York's TDI program. Okay, can you do the next couple slides? All right, so when we're talking about temporary disability insurance and paid family leave, which is going to be the core of what we're focusing on today, there's a massive disparity between these two programs in New York State. New York State's temporary disability insurance program, again, that's our medical leave program, and all workers, all it applies to all workers, not just during pregnancy, but pregnancy is one condition that is considered a serious illness for temporary disability insurance. So the benefit amount is 50% of the average weekly wage up to $170 a week. It doesn't allow for intermittent leave, job protection, or continued health insurance. And intermittent leave is the ability to take the leave in chunks. So in 1 day or 5 days. The way that our medical leave program works is that you can take up to 26 weeks, but you have to take that time all at once. And there's no job protection and no continued health insurance. Whereas our paid family leave program started in 2016, and it does offer job protection, it does offer continued health insurance, and it offers intermittent leave. So the leave can be taken, you can take a week and then work a couple weeks and then take another week. And in the context of temporary disability insurance, it's used for pregnancy, but also many other serious illnesses. So if you're thinking about cancer, for example, if somebody is doing cancer treatments, intermittent leave is an incredibly important component because it allows a person to do treatments for, let's say, a couple weeks and then go back to work and then take a couple days and then go back to work. And Mariah's going to talk later about the changes that we're advocating for in the temporary disability insurance program in New York. But in making sure that there's an intermittent leave is one of them. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to create parity between the two programs. Most other states, so 14 other states, including DC, have paid family and medical leave programs. And in most other states, the programs are combined. New York has this really old, archaic, outdated temporary disability insurance program that started in the 40s and hasn't been updated since 1989 and is way out of step with paid family leave. You can go to the next slide. So, like I said, temporary disability insurance is New York's paid medical leave program. It provides regular payments to people who are temporarily unable to work due to off the job serious illness or injury. And this includes pregnancy related disabilities, mental health conditions, substance use issues, or conditions like cancer. And even though I said pregnancy related disabilities, it includes pregnancy. So during the last 4 weeks of pregnancy, individuals are presumptively eligible for temporary disability insurance, meaning that all one needs to do to take that time is just be pregnant. There's no other eligibility requirements. And then after pregnancy, for 6 to 8 weeks, depending on whether for a cesarean section it's 8 weeks and otherwise it's 6 weeks. Again, that is time that a individual is presumptively eligible for the time off. So it's a really important bucket of leave during pregnancy, but on and post birth. It's in both times, but it's unfortunately the benefit amount is so low. It's $170 a week that a lot of people are unable to rely on it, and also there's no job protection or guarantee of continuation of health insurance. So despite being, I mean, it's the program that in other states people oftentimes take during pregnancy. In New York, it's a lot harder for people to rely on medical leave because of because it just hasn't been modernized and it needs many, many changes. There is also, so again, there's no intermittent leave in our medical leave program, and there's a 7 day waiting period. And it's based on medical necessity, and there is some certification with medical professional required, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There's one other thing that I wanted to share here. Oftentimes, how temporary disability insurance and paid family leave are used together during pregnancy is they're stacked. So in other states, what people do is they take that 4 weeks before pregnancy and then time after pregnancy and then so time after birth, let's 6 to 8 weeks, that is all covered and then paid family leave. And in New York, you one can take up to 26 weeks of total leave in a year. So that could be 12 weeks of paid family leave and then that 14 weeks of temporary disability insurance during last month of pregnancy and then post birth. And that ends up being a good amount of leave. But unfortunately, again, because our TDI program is the way it is, it's oftentimes people are unable to rely on it. Another thing that I did want to say here, oh, I just forgot it. You can do the next slide. All right, so we've talked a little bit about this eligibility, but a person must be employed or recently employed in New York State, have worked for the employer for at least 4 weeks or more in a row if full-time, and at least 25 weeks if part-time. Government workers are not eligible, and nearly all non-government workers are covered. However, employees, so those that this includes W-2 employees, for contract workers, there is a way to opt into both temporary disability insurance and paid family leave, and we're going to cover that in a little bit. So we've already gone over this somewhat extensively, but TDI can be used during pregnancy. In that last 4 weeks before pregnancy, the last 4 weeks of pregnancy, a person is presumptively eligible. So all you need to do is be pregnant in order to be eligible for the leave. And then 6 to 8 weeks after childbirth. And TDI can also be used for mental health related conditions, so long as the condition meets the definition of serious illness under the law. So this includes perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and is frequently used in order to treat those conditions as well as recovering from physical childbirth and during pregnancy. Also, I should have noted this earlier, but what we're discussing here is the floor. So I'm talking about what New York State provides as a floor. Many employers provide additional leave, In fact, I would say when we're talking about temporary disability insurance, probably most people's employers provide additional leave beyond the floor of the program because the program only offers $170 a week and no job protection and no continuation of health insurance. So most employers are probably providing a temporary disability insurance program that covers beyond that. But what we're covering here is just the floor. And it can be confusing to piece together what are your employer's legal obligations under New York state law, and then what are they offering on top of that? And I found both my personal experience and throughout practice, employers are not always forthright or even clear about those distinctions. Another thing I want to share about the way that New York's paid family leave programs work, both paid family leave and paid medical leave, and in this way, New York is an outlier. We run our both of these programs as insurance programs, so individuals pay into them. If you're a W-2 employee, you pay in each check, you're paying into both TDI and paid family leave. And then it's a collective pool and it works as an insurance program. So we're only paying the insurance premiums. Whereas other states have a state fund that pays out these programs, New York does it as insurance premiums. All right, I'm going to talk next about New York's paid prenatal leave law. This is a law that started at the beginning of this year, was effective at the beginning of this year. It allows pregnant workers to take up to 20 hours of paid protected time off work to attend appointments. This includes physical exams, medical procedures, monitoring, testing, discussions with a healthcare provider related to pregnancy, fertility treatment, end of pregnancy care appointments. Full and part-time and temporary workers are eligible. It's an extension of our state's sick time. So if you're pregnant, you get 20 additional hours of sick time addition. It's essentially what it is, and it can only be used for these specific needs, and it doesn't apply to another person. So many people ask about, can my partner, husband, spouse take time off in order to attend appointments with me? And the answer to that is no. We do have at a better balance, we have an FAQ that we'll share with more questions and answers about the paid prenatal leave law. But that's essentially how it operates. And it can be taken an hour at a time. So an employer can't ask you to take the full day off if you need to use the time. It can be used as much as just 1 hour in order to attend an appointment. So this is a question that we hear frequently on our helpline and have worked a lot around. If in the case of pregnancy loss, and that includes termination of pregnancy, miscarriage, or stillbirth, workers are eligible to take temporary disability insurance, but not paid family leave. So temporary disability insurance or the paid prenatal leave in the case of the care around a termination, miscarriage, or stillbirth. And the reason for this is because in all those cases, temporary disability insurance covers the recovering for oneself. So this creates this situation creates a massive it really lifts up the disparity between these two programs. Let's say a person is pregnant, is at the towards the end of pregnancy, has applied for paid family leave, has been conditionally approved, and then the very worst happens and either miscarriage or stillbirth happens. At that point, the claim is no longer valid under paid family leave and then goes to temporary disability insurance. And if these programs were aligned with each other, if the benefit levels were the same in both, it would not be a big deal. But because there's no job security, because there's no continuation of health insurance and TDI, and because the benefit level is so different, it creates a really, really heartbreaking problem for a lot of people where instead of being able to take the leave that they're counting for, they're then stuck with this really subpar program. And that is one of the reasons why we're trying to address this so that these programs have parity and people aren't in that situation. I also want to just take a step back and explain a little bit more about how paid family leave works in terms of the benefits, because I think I skipped over that piece. So, under paid family leave, again, there's job protection, there's health insurance, continuation of health insurance coverage, and 67% of the average weekly wage up to $1,177 a week. So that's around that number, almost $1,200, is around 67% of a person working up to like $95,000. That's where that cap is. And that goes for the full 12 weeks. And that goes up each year, the goes up a little bit each year. And that's what we're working on for paid family leave or paid medical leave, is for it to be have parity with paid family leave. So be 67% of salary up to that average weekly wage cap. And even though this says the benefit amount in temporary disability insurance is 50% of the average weekly wage, there's a cap of $170 a week, which Mariah is going to talk about more. It's been there since 1989. And so that's the reason why it's so incredibly low. Thanks, Mariah. All right, so we covered this a little bit earlier, but you can use our medical leave program for mental health. Any serious health condition. So it's serious health condition is an illness, injury, impairment, or physical or mental condition that involves either inpatient care in a hospital, residential care facility. So in order to qualify to be a serious health condition, you need either the inpatient care or you need continuing treatment or continuing supervision by a healthcare provider, and that includes mental health treatment. You can click on this QR code and it'll take you to the TDI program home site where you can see a little bit more about how you apply for disability benefits. Employers might have specific ways that they do this, but generally a person can apply and then they do have to work with their employer, and it you can go to the next slide. It also does require documentation from a healthcare provider. If there are concerns about more being shared than one wants, then you can work with your provider to give minimal information, but some, it does require diagnosis and some information about what's happening with your health condition. I also just wanted to point in the chat, I saw that Sophie dropped the Workplace Rights Hub link. And this has extensive information about everything I'm talking about, and also about the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act and the Pump Act. And we have state specific information throughout the country. So if you have questions in other states or know people that do, they can go there for that information. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about paid family leave. This allows New Yorkers to care for a loved one or bond with a new family member. That includes a new baby or a baby or a child that's come to you through foster care or adoption. Again, that compensation is up to 67% of the statewide average weekly wage. It's currently set, the cap is at around a little bit under $1,200 a week and is adjusted for inflation. It does include job protection, guaranteed health insurance, and the ability to take leave intermittently. And I think intermittent leave is a good example of something that employers may not know, and they may be giving employees wrong information, saying, you have to take your leave all at once. You can't take it in chunks, but under the law, it can be taken in chunks. So it can be taken in days. Those chunks can be days or weeks. And we can talk a little bit more about what to do. I would say if questions come up about what to do if your employer is not respecting that, not following what you're requesting, the best thing to do is to call our helpline, and we deal with those kind of calls regularly. And New York's law does not have the protections it should. We're also advocating for our paid family leave law to have more protections for workers, but there are some protections. So in order to be eligible for paid family leave, a person needs to be full-time. Employees who work 20 hours, 20 or more hours per week are eligible after 26 weeks of employment. So this is another unfortunate fact about our current paid family leave program. There is a 6 month waiting period, and that's not how pregnancy works for a lot of people, and it doesn't make much sense, but it does exist. So you have to be at the employer for 6 months in order to qualify. For part-time employees who work less than 20 hours a week, eligibility is met once a person has worked 175 days, and it doesn't need to be consecutive at that employer. And citizenship or immigration status isn't a factor in eligibility. It's that 6 month requirement of being at the same employer. That same requirement doesn't exist in TDI, but it does exist in paid family leave, and we are working on changing that. So TDI and paid family leave can be combined. They can be combined for up to 26 weeks. A person could take 12 weeks of paid family leave and then 14 weeks of TDI, and or the 14 weeks of TDI could come before, and then the 12 weeks of paid family leave. In the case of pregnancy, I think that's oftentimes how it goes. So self-employed workers are eligible for paid family leave and TDI in New York. And by self-employed worker, I just mean anyone who's an independent contractor who isn't a W-2 employee. But in order to be eligible, a person has to affirmatively opt into the program. So if you go to the paid family leave website, there's information for self-employed workers. We also have a guide for self-employed workers specific to New York, which covers this much more extensively than I'm going to right now. But a person can opt in, and then you start paying the same premiums that other people are paying, so that W-2 employees are automatically paying, and then you're eligible. However, if you don't opt in within the first 6 months of quote unquote becoming self-employed, you must wait 2 years before being eligible. And this is another aspect of our paid family leave program that we are advocating to change. I don't know that it's going to change in the near future, but it doesn't make much sense, and it is something that we want to change. If you opt into if you opt into paid family leave as a self-employed individual, you're automatically also they go hand in hand. So when you opt in, you're opting into paid family leave and TDI. And it just means that you're paying for the insurance policy, you're paying the premiums, you now are among the every all the other workers who are eligible. A couple other special considerations for freelancers. The FMLA doesn't cover freelance workers at all. And the majority of states with paid family leave laws allow for some sort of self-employed worker opt-in, like the one I was just talking about in New York. The process and eligibility requirements vary state to state, and this is a link to that guide, which I believe is also in the chat. And here's a QR code for our Workplace Rights Hub. I already talked about it a little bit, but you can go state by state and find all of this information that I'm talking about and much more, broken down by each law and by the specific question area.
Okay, thanks so much, Jesse. We know that this is like a lot of information. Um, these laws can be pretty complicated and complex, particularly because there are so many different bits and pieces. And what I'm going to be talking about are our efforts to reform our TDI program. I don't think anybody here I don't have to tell anybody here that $170 a week is not a livable amount of money to live on, particularly when you are going through any kind of major health crisis or preparing for a baby. A serious deduction in salary is not something that is workable for most New Yorkers. So just really quickly, like as that overview, temporary disability insurance is used for yourself. Any kind of medical or mental health issue that you have, you take TDI. If you're caring for another person or a loved one or bonding with a new child, you take that paid family leave. And I think we've gone over what some of the differences are, and just that ultimately the TDI program is really, really, really far behind what our paid family leave is in most areas, other than it is the eligibility requirements for TDI are slightly easier than paid family leave, but the salary, no job protection, no health insurance, and no intermittent leave certainly doesn't make up for that. Um, so I think sometimes it can be useful to also think about how other states are doing TDI, paid medical leave, paid family leave, sometimes referred to as paid family and medical leave. And unfortunately, New York is in the very, very, very like dead last. If you look over at New Jersey, 8 miles away, if you are working in New Jersey, you get over 6 times the amount of wage compensation if you yourself are going through any kind of medical crisis or pregnancy, any kind of pregnancy related disability. And here on this side, we have this $170, which is just so drastically different from really what any other state is doing. And this can kind of come to show that like a temporary disability, an improved TDI program is within reach. It is possible. Other states are doing it. And it is something that can be a real benefit for workers across the state and has been a real benefit for workers across all sorts of different states. So this kind of leads us into some of the work that A Better Balance has really been focused on for the past couple of years is reforming what our TDI program looks like. And we've been leading a coalition to strengthen and modernize the paid medical leave program that we have in New York. And that comes in the form of a bill. That bill is number 884. It is sponsored by Assemblymember Szilagyi in the Assembly, and in the Senate, it's Senator Ramos. We don't need to go too in the weeds with that, but just to give a little bit of an overview, these bills are trying to make sure that we really have parity between this subpar TDI program and this much better paid family leave program, by removing that $170 a week cap, by providing people with intermittent leave, by ensuring that there's job protection, making sure that people are able to stay on their health insurance when they're on leave. And one of the other pieces of this too is that this is like a cost shared program between workers and employers, and it's cost shared. The premiums are shared between the workers and the employers. It kind of addresses this stillbirth issue that is really a glaring problem for a lot of people. And the other little piece of that is that this is a phase in program. So it wouldn't happen automatically, which will allow for businesses and organizations to kind of phase into that program, that we can have like a real workable TDI program for everybody. Um, I think one of the big questions that we get is who pays for the program. And one of the things that I will mention at the top is that paid family leave is funded entirely through worker deductions. So workers pay 100% of the paid family leave premium. And TDI has historically been split between workers and employers since the inception of the program, which was in 1949. And this program the premiums will continue to be split between workers and employers through payroll deductions. Obviously, there are some caveats, like if you're a self-employed worker, you do need to do that opt-in, but the premiums would be split between workers and employers, workers covering 40%, employers covering 60%, and workers would continue to pay 100% of paid family leave. We've seen that paid family leave has been a really big success in New York, and paid family and medical leave programs have been wildly successful across the state, with new states creating and implementing new programs to address. It helps increase productivity, retention, and it really helps benefit employers in the long run, for all of these reasons. And just a little side piece is that, like, if you've been thinking a little bit about the state budget, there's been a lot of conversations around budgets in the state and frankly around the country, but there is no cost to the state, very minimal cost to the state in implementation. One piece I think we've really gone over is that workers' comp and TDI are totally separate. So TDI is really for off-the-job injuries, and workers' compensation is only for issues that arise on the job. So if you, for example, are um, a construction worker and you break your leg playing with your kid, that is an off the job injury that you need TDI for, cancer, any other chronic conditions, lupus, endometriosis, chronic migraines, those kinds of things are all off the job. Can't really prove that that happened on the job. And so the TDI program is very separate from the workers' comp program. Um, and we're wrapping up and kind of heading into what our questions are, question and answer program. But one of the things that we did want to say is that this is not obviously this $170 a week, no job protection, no health insurance, no intermittent leave is a completely unworkable program. We hear from workers on our helpline who are forced to stay working against medical advice because the threat of losing your job and your health insurance at the time when you need it the most is too serious of a concern, or are forced to live on that $170 because they have no other option. It's New York should not have a program that is this far behind. And we should not have this huge disparity between taking care of yourself and taking care of a loved one. So we would really love your help in speaking to your assembly members and your senators, particularly in the assembly. Just a piece is that this bill has passed in the Senate twice, but it's been stuck in the assembly. And we are really trying to make sure that people are being very vocal about making sure that TDI can get across the finish line, because it's everybody deserves to be able to take the time they need off, take time off of work when they need it to address their medical care. Part of that is sending this letter. Another part is that if you are a business owner that supports TDI reform, please feel free to let us know. And I can drop my email in the chat as well. And one of the other things that we've really seen as we've gone through this campaign is that a lot of people don't actually know that TDI is a program that exists. And part of that is because once you find out that it's a program that exists, it's not really a workable program, that it's not necessarily something that people take. But making sure that people are aware that TDI does exist, it is an option that you can take. And then following up on that is that there is a plan to make sure that New Yorkers have the paid medical leave that they need and the paid medical leave that New Yorkers deserve. So just really talking to your friends, your family, community members, anybody about TDI, and to please, if you have a personal TDI story to share with us, we have a community advocates program at A Better Balance, and we would be really happy to speak with you if you're feeling like you just cannot believe that a state like New York has such a bad program. I know when I started this job, I was in case management before this. I was really shocked that New York had such a subpar program for TDI. And then just so this is a little kind of, and that QR code, sorry, I think I said this QR code will link you directly to a form where you can send a letter to the governor, your assembly member, and your senator as soon as you put your address in. And that just will let your assembly member know that this is something that you're thinking about, that you care about, that you think that New Yorkers need to have an improved TDI program. It's really wild when you think about if you were working in New Jersey, you would have substantially better benefits. And that 8 mile difference can really create just such a significant difference in people's lives where you're working. And this leads you just to reaching out to the A Better Balance website. And I think we've mentioned, and the helpline has been at the bottom of the screen. If you have any individual questions, we run a free and legal confidential helpline. And we've linked a couple of resources to know your rights. And also, please feel free to follow us on social media, and I'll make sure that my um, email is shared. But I'm gonna stop screen sharing just because I haven't been able to see. I did see that there were some Q&As that came up, but I haven't seen them. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop screen sharing.
I can also start us off with these Q&As.
Great.
So the first one is a question about the weeks of eligibility for under TDI, under a medical leave program for type of birth. And I might have misspoke, but it's 6 weeks for a vaginal birth and 8 weeks for a C-section. And again, that doesn't mean that a person couldn't get more time. It just means that that's the presumptive eligibility that automatically exists under the program. And this kind of relates to this next question too. So this next question is, if I take my full parental leave through my employer but am struggling with postpartum mood challenges, can I extend my leave using temporary disability insurance benefits? And the short answer is yes, that there is the potential for that is there. So if one took a full 12 weeks of bonding leave under paid family leave and was struggling with any kind of postpartum related mental health condition, yes, that's what the TDI program is for. And so like I said before, you can take medical leave if you're dealing with mental health conditions. And so that's something that if we had a better medical leave program, would be a frequent use of it, of taking the time that you need for bonding and then taking additional time needed for any other medical needs that come up around birth and postpartum, including mental health conditions. So this next question is, when you receive payment through paid family leave, does it go directly to you or to your employer? I don't know that this is true 100%, but most of the time it goes directly to the person who's applied because the payment is coming from the insurance carrier. So once you've applied for paid family leave, that you apply through that insurance carrier, there's paperwork that your employer needs to sign off on, but then the payments oftentimes are direct deposited. They go directly to the person in most cases. And again, like the way that paid family leave works is oftentimes, let's say an employer offers more than that 67% of pay or at a cap of around $1,200 a week. If your employer is offering more, oftentimes what employers do is they have their employee apply for the state program, get those payments, and then they cover additional money on top of that. Okay, this next question is, when can I apply for TDI and for paid family leave? Do I have to wait until after I give birth? And the answer is no. So for TDI, for temporary disability insurance, again, people are eligible. If you're pregnant, you're eligible for the last month, presumptively eligible. I'm going to slow down on this part. So throughout pregnancy, if there's a serious health condition, if pregnancy is creating a serious health condition, so if there's any sort of, I mean, it could be for many different things. It could be um mental health related things that are coming up during pregnancy. It could be the need for bed rest. It could be all sorts of conditions that qualify for a serious health condition. At any point when that condition is happening, you can apply for temporary disability insurance for medical leave. And during the last month of pregnancy, there's presumptive eligibility. So that means there's nothing that needs to be shown in besides just the fact that you are in the last month of pregnancy to be eligible for it. And then for paid family leave, I believe that the way that the application process works is you can apply before, you can apply during pregnancy, and then once you have a certificate of a live birth, then that claim becomes live and then you can begin getting payments. And for paid family leave, a person can take it for up to a year after either the birth of the child or that child coming into your life, if it's foster care or adoption. So it doesn't need to be taken right away, but if you're taking it right away, you can apply beforehand, and then once you have the certificate of live birth, then it becomes like a live claim. This next question is, does my employer apply for paid family leave on my behalf, or do I need to? So this employers may have different ways of doing the application, but in most cases, you as the worker are applying for paid family leave, and if you look at the paid family leave website, there's information on how to apply, and then your employer is certifying your paperwork. So if you're in an employer where they're paying for like 100% of leave, the process might be totally different. But if you're using the state program, then you do need to be a part of the application process. Your employer is not going to do that, at least not solely on your behalf. But again, like employers might have their own processes. This next question is curious if you can speak about whether TDI and paid family leave can be claimed at the same time as a private disability insurance policy that an employer offers. Can the private insurance provider limit that, or the employer too? Can they limit that? I'm not sure I fully understand this question. Can you add a little bit of additional information about what you're asking? I don't fully understand this question. I'm going to read it one more time, but I'm wondering if part of this question is, can an employer require you to take them at the same time? Like, can an employer require you to take paid family leave and TDI at the same time, like let's say post birth? And the answer is no under the state program. But again, we're talking about what the state provides. So it's 67% of pay for paid family leave, and it's pretty abysmal. It's only $170 a week for TDI. Those can be taken separately, and an employer can't require you to take them at the same time. You're eligible for 12 weeks of paid family leave and then up to 26 weeks of TDI, but only 26 weeks combined. So it would be 14 weeks of TDI if you're taking the full 12 weeks of paid family leave. And an employer cannot force someone to take those on top of each other because workers are eligible for that full 26 weeks. Yeah, that's how I would answer that. And then let's see in the chat. That's a good question. And I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I believe that the leave needs to be taken within the first year. So I don't think you could start the leave at 11 months. I'm not 100% certain of that, but I'm pretty sure that leave needs to happen within a year of birth or the child coming into your life. I think that so there's a additional question about filing concurrent claims. Like, could you have a state temporary disability insurance claim and then also a private claim through your employer? And that's the kind of question that's really, really best for helpline, because I just would need more information about the specifics in order to answer that. Um, this next question is, are you required to let your employer know you intend to apply for paid family leave? If so, how far in advance? This is a good question. I need to think about that question a little bit more. I mean, you would need to go through whatever procedure you need to go through for your employer in order to take leave. I don't know that there's any like that there's no requirement being placed from paid family leave itself, but there are internal workplace requirements that may apply. That one I would need to think about a little bit more. And that is a good question for our helpline if you have concerns around that question. Is income from paid family leave taxed? Yes, it is. It looks like someone put you have to provide 30 days notice for paid family leave if the leave is expected, which makes sense in the case of pregnancy, it is expected. We really appreciate everyone's time and coming to the webinar and happy to answer more questions if there's any last minute questions. Otherwise, also happy to give people 5 minutes back.
I actually have a question, more just out of curiosity. But is there any reason you wouldn't take TDI? I know you've said it's not the best program, it's not great coverage, obviously, but if it's money, is there any reason, like everyone should be applying for TDI in combination with PFL?
Yeah, I think there are several reasons. I mean, I think for a lot of workers, it's not possible because of the income. So if one can handle $170 a week and isn't getting more from their employer and that's livable, then there's no reason not to take it, but there's also no job protection. So I think I would just say like the vulnerability and precarity of the program and like what that creates for people makes it unusable for many. But in other states with paid family and medical leave programs where the benefit levels are somewhat livable and have parity with each other, that's how they're used often during pregnancy. TDI and paid family leave are stacked, and then the leave time is extended to, roughly 6 months.
Right. Yeah, I guess I was talking just more about in combination with PFL. That's when, why not tack on TDI? I guess was more my clarification.
Yeah, that makes sense. But if you do that in New York, then the paid family leave, you're getting a compensation that is at least potentially more livable, more possible for a short period of time for that 3 months, and TDI is not. So they can be combined though, and that is how it's used in many places. And it is like, to me, that is how it should be used in New York. Once we have parity between these two programs, because there are needs for recovery there's need there. It makes sense that one would take that last month of pregnancy if needed, and then also have time to recover physically from childbirth and to bond with the baby. Like both of those needs are distinct, even though, of course, they exist simultaneously once a child is born. Like they're both happening at the same time, but they're also distinct, and that's the reason for both of those, for medical leave and for paid family leave. So it totally makes sense to combine. There's a couple more questions. Do I have to know if I want to take paid family leave intermittently or altogether when I apply, or can I decide later? I'm not sure the answer to that question off the top of my head. I don't know exactly how the process for applying intermittently works. And also there's needing to deal with that with an employer too. But again, if that's something that you're really wanting to figure out, I would suggest reaching out to our helpline and we can talk through that individually with a lot more information about your situation. The next question is, can you take the disability leave after paid family leave, or does it have to be TDI first? No, it can be after. So for the disability leave, you need to have a serious health condition. And if the serious health condition requirement is met, the leave can be taken then. So the 26 weeks during a year that both can be taken, it's not in a particular order. It's just for any time you're taking TDI, you need a serious health condition. And if that requirement is met, then you can take that leave. They cannot be claimed at the same time concurrently. So this next question is, but to clarify, TDI and PFL, they cannot be claimed at the same time concurrently. They have to be taken sequentially. I mean, I think it would it benefits the person taking it for them to be taken sequentially because then you have more time. All right, thank you all so much.
Thank
Please reach out if you have any questions. And I know I've already talked about our helpline a lot, but we welcome um, you to reach out there as well.
Thanks, everybody.
you.
Take care.